Harmonizing with Nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zeimet.
And good morning, everyone. It is time for the Beverly Zeimet Show. And this is where being the best you that you can be just gets easier all the time. I have a guest with me today, Cheryl Clark. She's out of Toronto, Canada, right?
Yeah, Toronto, Canada.
It's like, yes, that's where Toronto still is. And of course, Robert Carlisle, some of you know him, and he's out of Michigan. And so we have a real treat for you today. I am going to do a little bit of intro here on our guest speaker so you can know a little bit about her. And let's go do that. Okay. Technical things here. All right, so Cheryl's she's spoken at many organizations across the North America continent. Her words are filled with transparency, vulnerability, emotion, and passion. And her main passion is centered around others. You will see Cheryl truly believes in herself. And I met Cheryl, oh my gosh, I don't know how many years it's been, probably 7 years now, 6 years. And it's been a treat to have her in my life. She guides herself under the principles of Wayne Dyer. Look for the light in others and treat them as if that is all you see. That's such a beautiful quote from Wayne Dyer. If none of you listeners out there have read any of his books, oh my gosh, he's just been a great mentor of mine as well. And I love every one of his books. She also strongly believes in grace towards one another. She's got a heart of gold. Her life experiences have been included being an entrepreneur for over 15 years, fostering a newborn baby for 13 months, working with addicts. She's detained in the United States immigration system for 295 days and recently has rebuilt the process from scratch. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the show and what she has done. It's pretty amazing how when you get thrown a lemon, it turns to be a cherry, and a surprising turn of events. So today, Cheryl is living actually Ontario, building her momentum for the business, Embrace and Become. So make sure you look up her stats. They're up here on the screen. Embrace and Become. Her downtime, she likes to enjoy the outdoors with her little fur friends. So this moment of matter, she is making moments count both personally and in business, right? And that is our guest today. Get back over here. There we are. So Cheryl, you've done a lot of accomplishments. So when I first met you in Vegas, we were in a networking group, right?
We were.
And gosh, she was in Arizona, and the networking group was in Las Vegas. Her and her partner came up to Vegas, and we met, and it was just like, boom, this magnet, and it's never changed. And so I've watched her journey. I've watched her up and down and all over the place, and all of a sudden she disappears one day, right? I'm like, where did she go? She just I literally just disappeared. So I'm searching for her, and I'm talking to this person, talking to that person, and I finally found her, and that was her little journey up there in detention. So share a little bit about that and how that has impacted your life and has turned into what you're doing today.
Wow. So yes, disappeared is the right word because I absolutely felt like I had disappeared from my own life too, for lack of better words. So
Sure.
I was detained by the United States immigration system for being a Canadian in the United States, and I was there without visa. So I absolutely was there by federal implications illegally, and picked up by the United States immigration. There's no grace in that system, since I teach grace often. And so therefore it's not, you don't get an opportunity to explain yourself. You don't get an opportunity to correct things or make things right per se. Under the current administration, it literally just becomes a detainment situation. And so that detainment, 295 days in a facility in the desert in Arizona, which is a total no-fly zone. 1,500 other detainees, and racial-wise,
Wow.
96% of them were Hispanics. And there was probably three main demographics in the facility that I was detained in. One would be the Guatemalans, the Hondurans, what we call the border runners, for lack of better words, those who are running and fleeing for their lives, quite literally, and or searching for a better life and crossing the border illegally, hoping to find that in the United States. And then there's those that have been in the United States all or most of their natural born lives, that came across as young children via their parents or their grandparents, and have built lives and families in the United States, and then get, for whatever reason, picked up for lack of papers and get detained, and yet they know no other country. And then there's the odd person like myself, who is not Hispanic in nature, that gets picked up as well for the same principle. There were some Russians, a couple other Canadians there, and some different other parts of the world demographics that were in the facility. Did it change me? I chanted every day on those stairs, I don't want that. I didn't want that place to change me. And one of my fellow detainees came out, and her words still ring true to this day. And it was just kind of like, I may not have changed, but the way I see things have. And
Right.
that
Oh, wow.
totally,
That just gave me chills.
yeah. I
Wow.
tell you, I remember her name's Karen Gonzalez. I can even tell you who it is. But I remember when she posted that on social media, and so many of us detainees are still very much attached and
Hmm.
connected. And I understand more and more the principle of human connection, but I also understand once you've gone through some kind of traumatic experience, the bond is something that no one will ever be able to understand unless you've been through it, per se. And so we have a detainee group of almost 300 folks,
Oh my
um,
gosh.
in Eloy. And as they come out, they keep gravitating because it's what they know.
Right.
But I remember when Karen posted that, I may not have changed, but the way I see things have, and I can't, she articulated it better than I ever could. And so I've stolen her words and ran with it all this time. Back
Wow.
in Canada after 16 years, totally lost in everything, material possessions, business platforms, and everything, and just rebuilding what I know. And what I know is totally all about action, not necessarily mindset. That's your specialty, but all about action, and how action can pivot. In fact, pivot our mindset. If we take the right action to move ourselves forward, our mindset tends to follow it.
Yes.
And we're building a company, and my forte and there's two of us in the company. My business partner is all about youth and children, and she's a registered early childhood educator up here. And my passion's always been the entrepreneurs and small business owners of the world and getting them where they want to go. So it's been a fun journey. Detainment definitely, though, was a huge pivotal moment for me.
Yeah.
Huge.
Oh, such a beautiful comment there, you know. You may not have changed, but how you see things changed. That is so powerful. So powerful. And if we could only do that in our daily life, you know, and this message here, you know, becoming that best you that you can be is always changing. There's always improvement. There's always room for betterness, right? And so if you look at the world around you, that you don't have to go through some type of traumatic experience like Cheryl did here, you know, just really look at the world around you and start perceiving it from a different viewpoint.
And I think the key to that is that the circumstances don't have the power to change you unless you allow them to. Number
Right.
one.
Right.
And number two, I love how you said, look at the world around you. It's not the world experiencing, it needs to be the world experiencing me rather than me experiencing the world.
Right.
And that, I think, becomes a huge opportunity for all of us, that circumstantially, they don't have the power unless we give it to them. And that was probably one of the largest lessons
Right.
through that detainment process. But it's so often we say things are happening to me, and I know that you're a firm believer and they don't happen to us.
No, no,
They
they don't. They happen
happen.
around us, and it's how we I guess connect to them, how we attach that to us. Same way
Yeah,
with possessions. How do we attach our possessions to us, right?
yeah.
It's not the same thing. And so your awareness, opening that awareness, they talk about awakening, you know, that's one thing, but it's awareness I think is more important than awakening, because if you have your awareness, everything's going to awaken, and your perception. So your perception as a child to your perception as an adult is so different. And when you're playing those automatic programs continuously, it becomes that personality trait. And it's habitual, and it just goes on and on and on. And how do you change that? So it's going back to recognize what that surrounding was, what those events were that caused that habit to become your personality trait, and then rewire it back to that beginning, pull out that old database, put that new database in, and your perception and everything changes. But you have to recognize that and be aware of what has transpired then and what's transpired now, because if you don't change it in the now, that future is going to look exactly like your past. And that's not always a great thing, you know.
And I think it also takes a certain level of, once we start recognizing that, it takes a certain, you have to be ready for the accountability of that.
Oh, so that's a big word, accountability, right?
It's so much easier for me to say that I am like this because of,
right.
you know, the parental growing up, or because of the influence of the youth and my peers. I'm like this because of my detainment. And so, but once you start saying, no, I'm like this because I chose to learn these lessons or to feel these emotions as I traveled this journey, then it totally changes it, because now I'm responsible for exactly how I'm acting and how I'm behaving and my reaction to things. And so the accountability factor, I get why a lot of people don't do it, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Because the accountability factor alone becomes a huge opportunity.
Well, it does
for us.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do too with facing that truth, you know. And sometimes that truth doesn't taste good, doesn't smell good, doesn't feel good, doesn't look good, right? And so it's easier to fall into that blame game thing. Yesterday I talked about the victim role, right? You know, so that all comes in together. You know, you're the victim, the poor little me person, right? And so being accountable for yourself and saying, hey, you know, just buckle up here. Yes, so you messed up, but you know, did you really mess up? It was an experience that's going to make you a better you when you recognize where you need to make the change, because you're dealing with old database that was truth, old database that's no longer there. So you need to just get rid of the old database, put the new stuff in, and that becomes your automatic pilot. And those are some of the techniques that I've learned how to develop over the years to help people do that without drudging up, without re-experiencing all of that. And so when you talk about some of the experiences that you had and some of these people that were detained, you know, for 265 days?
295.
295.
Days are important.
Woo, you know, that's just shy of a year, you know, and that's a long time to be able to get a different perspective and see how people who had probably been in there longer than that already, you know, and to maybe work with them to help their spirit, to give them hope. Gosh, I couldn't even fathom that. You know, and I know you struggled a little bit when you came out of it, you know, because now you're moving from this world that was so removed from anything you could have ever imagined back out into the real world. It's like, how do I do this, right? And, you know, so when we look at our prison systems, you know, and even just detention centers, it's teaching people how to live in that world that becomes estranged.
There is another, and God love you for bringing that up, because honestly, there is nothing out there that I have found that can equip one for life after detainment, whether it be a jail system, a prison system, or just a detention facility. That becomes a huge, I think that's why we see so many people get caught up in the systems. Right. Because, and I also think that's also where we see so many people that don't recognize the only control they have. You live in a world for 295 days that literally dictates what time you go to sleep, what time your lights are turned off, what time you're allowed to shower, what time you're allowed to eat, what you're allowed to eat, how much you're allowed to eat.
Oh my gosh.
Where you're allowed to walk, where you're not allowed to walk, how you're allowed to walk, how quick you're allowed to pace. I mean, what you're allowed to wear, what you can't wear, what you can have in your housing complex, how many rolls of toilet paper you can have, how much toothpaste you can have. When you are so restricted that way, and I think that, so there's people there that end up thriving in that environment because there's absolutely no accountability and or no means of me having to do anything for myself,
Right.
for truly. But then there's also that, I think that that's where my pivotal moment was, is the only thing I could control or work on controlling at that point was my mind. And so
Right.
the mind, because there was nothing action wise that I had any power or control over. I mean, obviously, I was very blessed to be fluently English, and all the litigation and legal paperwork is in English that you and I don't commonly use every day. Words that, like it's up to the discernment of the court. Well, even those that were bilingual from a Mexican or Spanish background going into English, discernment's not a word that we use every day in the English language, let alone them able to understand, translate it. So the system is set up for failure, and I'll be very blunt about that because there's no pathway to lead people clearly through it. So I was blessed to be able to help a lot of people with my English skills and my English language skills, and knowing some detainees to be able to drum it down so that we can get the messages across. But it's huge when they come out of there. We've watched so many of them try to get captured again to go back into detainment.
Because it's been such a detrimental routine that they don't know how to act anymore.
And there's no tools to equip them when they get out. I literally was brought to the Rainbow Bridge, which is between Buffalo, New York, and Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada. And you're literally you're crossing your own border, especially if you're a deportee or being deported. You're crossing your own border. There's not even a best of luck or a goodbye.
Oh my gosh, they just open the door and say, go?
Exactly right. So whatever, no ID. Where my first phone call was like, we'll get you a hotel room. Sleep deprivation is very huge. I had no ID to be able to capitalize on that hotel room. We'll send you money by Western Union. I have no ID to be able to get that kind of funding. And so they're literally in the same principle when they're set across. So where I was put back into a civilized country, thankfully, those that are being deported back into the southern borders aren't necessarily blessed with the same favor. And so they're being dropped into gang-affiliated streets, war-torn countries. Those that are being shipped back, there was ladies that were shipped back to Congo, which literally dropped into the middle of a war-torn country and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
So the principle of equipping some of these people or getting them to help on how to restart after detainment was huge. I was blessed to have friends like you and others that looked for me when I got back out, overwhelmed with positive, and I'll be the first to say positive can overwhelm just as quickly as negative. And I struggled for the first little bit. And I'm going to tell you, my struggles aren't necessarily over. And I use struggle very carefully because I hate that we put negative emotion on our journey. Because to me, I'm attaching myself that my struggle is negative, and my struggle has not necessarily always been negative. My struggle has been very empowering, very uplifting, very eye-opening. Many forks opened up in front of me. I had to decide what path I wanted to walk down. And so I dislike that we always think that challenges are negative, where I'm of the mindset that challenges can be very positive, and they should be viewed that way. But it's crazy how ill-equipped people can be when it comes to coming out of any kind of situation. And detainment necessarily doesn't have to be from a legality like in belly chains and handcuffs. I mean, some folks some folks maybe feel detained in their own four walls, for Pete's sakes, or detained and locked into their working structure that they're working in now, or stuck in this relationship. And detainment can take on any form.
It can.
Nothing equipped us on how to move from detainment to move forward.
And that's why you see a lot of women that maybe are in abusive situations, right? And they break free, or someone helps them get out, and now they're like in oblivion and they don't know what to do. And so they end up going back into that situation because it's what right? So that's a fault here, just a flaw in communication, I guess you would call it, right? So, Robert, you've heard us talking here for a while. Give us a little input. I'm watching you, watching your motions here, and everything, and it's like, So, share what just your viewpoint of what you've heard us talking about here and how it has impacted you, or if you have questions.
Detainment, huh? So, I mean, I spent 10 years in the U.S. Army, and at some point I actually thought I was detained the whole time, because just like what she was saying, that they tell you what to do, vertigo, and you're just
Mm.
like, wow. And it got to the point where, as long as I got a paycheck, I didn't really care what I was doing, where I was going. And it makes sense that, when soldiers or sailors get R&R, they just go nuts for that whole time, and half of them make it back, half of them are, the first sergeant or sergeant major has to go down and get them out of jail wherever they were partying. So I'm listening to this, and it is, there's a lot of good points being said here. And my takeaway is, like, yeah, I mean, anything could be a detainment. If you're, like, I'm way out in a remote area where it's like people come up here to go camping, but I'm actually living up here. And say if my vehicle broke down, I would be detained up here, you know. And but one thing I can say from just the whole detainment uh, mindset or whatever, there's also a connection. It makes a strong connection bond with people around you.
Yes, it
So,
does.
like, my neighbors that are up and down the road, they don't just use the telephone to communicate. They come right up to your front door and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" So I would say, from the detainment side, of, I guess, being out in a far remote area, that it does create a connection as well.
Mhm.
So, I was hearing a lot of synergies here, where, like how you two met and everything, from, a hardship, so.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride for both of us in different directions, you know. But when you talk about that detainee thing, right? How many people do you know, Cheryl, and probably you too, Robert? Even the neighbor next door that has locked themselves in their own little world and are even afraid to walk out their own backyard. They won't go shopping. And now it's made easy. All you got to do is, dial up the store and say, "Hey, I need this." And they drop it off at your door, right? So it's a world of being confined. And again, we talked about a little bit about mindset, and those emotions and stuff, that come up from your past. And it's fear. It's all fear based. And it's where have we let our mind go? This brain has just gone off into these tangents with this spiral that just keeps on going down, 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 right? And how do we get past that? And I believe you really hit the nail on the head when you said, you know it's how I see things differently. And so being in a situation, that mind is so powerful. And I can go back to the beginning of my story, when it took me so deep into depression. I was right there on that edge of suicide. I mean, I literally was planning on, how do I make my exit? And when reality set in, and I heard this little voice say, "Who's going to take care of your kids?" Well, it's like, well, wait a minute, that's not fair. know and it really turned the things around. And you talked about that accountability. I had to become accountable for, oh my gosh, I've got 3 kids, they're under the age of 5. That means I got to hang around for a long time. I had to start seeing things differently. And it's like, I didn't know how I was going to do that. It's like, because I wanted out of this dead end marriage. I wanted, out of Iowa. I wanted all these things, right? And I was so filled with anger and blame. I mean, I held everybody out there responsible instead of here. But once I blasted that anger out, I mean, I was walking down the gravel roads kicking and screaming and yelling, and giving God a piece of my mind, so to speak. But I heard these voices. I heard, I listened and paid attention to what my higher self was telling me. I'm thinking this is God is talking to me back then, in the 70s. But really, when I got out into the spiritual world and everything else, that higher consciousness of who you are, it's you that's talking to you. And that's where this whole avenue came that put me down the path that I went, is to be able to be aware and conscious of everything that's going on and listen to what your higher self is guiding you to do. It's you have it all here. And the key element is moving out of that that blame. that it's everybody else's fault. It's being responsible for yourself. And
It's the victim mentality.
it is, it is, it is.
Yeah, for lack of a
We
better
talk
word.
about the chakra system. Some of our listeners may understand what the chakra systems are. You have your physical chakras, which are your survival, your victim, and your martyr roles. How many of us women, especially, victim, martyr, victim, martyr, victim, martyr, right?
Yeah.
Those are all those physical things that take place. But when you start moving up into the heart, so you got your heart chakra and your throat chakra, and you combine those two, so when you can start coming from the heart. And that's what I think what really connected me to you was your heart. You're so open, and your expression always came from the heart. Before you spoke, you could just feel this, what was coming up, move through the heart, grab all this beautiful heart energy, and then poof, she talks. I don't know
I,
how else to describe that, but that, I'm a people watcher, right? And I saw that in you, and it's like, oh my gosh, it just I was so drawn into who you are and what you represent. And I am so blessed to have you on this show, and so honored to have you in my life, that I can't thank you enough for coming and crossing my path and staying there. Even when you disappeared, you were
you want
still
to
here,
hear.
and it's like wherever she's at. And then when I did find out where you were, it's like, wow, because I could tune into your spirit and just give you good energy and stuff like that. And
And
then,
that's huge. The point, it's funny where we preach self accountability and responsibility for self, for lack of better words. Boy, oh boy, the opportunity to step outside of ourselves and be the voice for somebody else, or the
right,
light, for lack of better words, or to show them grace and stuff. There's some people, even I've been out for 16 8 17 18 months now, back, and there's some my stories, I'm more comfortable sharing it and talking about it now, for lack of better words.
sure,
And as people are hearing it, I had no idea, and is the first response. And you're right, you didn't have any idea, and you don't have
no,
any idea about the person sitting next to you either, and you don't have
right,
any idea about the person that you just walked in front of at the grocery store that may have looked a
yeah,
little perturbed, and you have no idea. And so that principle became huge for me too, only because, not only because, but one of the main reasons is those that are in the detainment facility, especially those that are running the border, some of those stories of what those folks are going through, um, when it comes to persecution, torture, the MS-13, the Mexican cartel, those stories are not just hype, they're very real. I was honored and humbled to hear so many stories of what some of these ladies that you and I would never fathom ever going through, and
wow,
or ever having to make the choices, that some of these people are having to make for themselves. Everybody had a story. And so, there it became a very much a humanitarian issue in my brain and in my heart. But when it comes to even seeing people now, we often don't, where we are able to work our self talk and work our mindsets and push through it. Boy, the opportunity for some of us to be that voice until someone else can correct their mindset or see a different light about
hmm,
themselves becomes a huge responsibility that I think most of us should hopefully want to take on, and to be able to be that positive voice for that you can do it, or what do you need today, or I am sitting here with you and I am just going to hold space. I did a Friday flash on my Facebook wall, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, especially during that, up here in Canada, that bell talk thing is huge, so I'm speaking Canadian right now, but it's all about a suicide prevention and suicide awareness, mental health, thing that happens up here on a certain day every year. But we see the posts circulating through social media. And my coffee pot's always on, that standard meme. My coffee pot's always on, my door's always open, you can come and talk to me.
right,
And where I love that thought process, I don't think the issue is lack of people to talk to. I think the issue is lack of voice. And so, where I know I have a handful of people that I could probably go and say, I am struggling today too, it's not that they're not there for me, it's that I don't know how to
Reach
approach
out.
them and articulate it and say, this is where I'm at today, because it's a space that we're not familiar with ourselves, to be able to put it out there and to make the awareness happen in order to empower them to be able to help us. Because that's, as females, and no slight on the male population, but as females, we're typically, most of us, and actually the boys too, with we tend to be fixers, right? And so if someone
Right.
comes to us and I have this problem, we
Right.
want to be able to say, well, let me fix your problem. But if you can't articulate what the problem is, you've now just totally dismembered.
Exactly.
So
Right.
I think that when it comes to the whole suicide prevention and mental health thing, it's not the issue of I don't have anywhere to go. The issue is I don't know how to go where I need to go. And so I tell you to pivot that awareness. And I mean, thankfully I have a life partner and I have an amazing supportive business partner as well. And so in that aspect, I mean, I have two people that I can gravitate towards when I just want to sit still. And I'm at the point with either one of them where I don't know what I'm feeling today, but I'm feeling it. So just let me go. But it's that whole having that safe space, but boy, how we can hold that for others. And so where we're preaching, be the best you that you can be, and part of me is kind of like, be the best you that you can be for somebody else too, because it
That's a
becomes a
good point. That's a
huge
good
thing.
point. Oh my gosh, yeah. And I tell people too when I'm working, with friends or with clients or anything, it's like we reach a point sometimes in life, and like you said, we don't know what to say. We don't know who to say it to. We don't know where to go because there's always that fear of rejection, or what are they going to think about me? It's like, oh my, they might think I'm really, I'm really, tainted or whatever. But it's like, if you need a sounding board, then just text me or call me and say, I just need a sounding board. And then
Mhm.
just let them just air and vent out and say whatever they need to say in the moment that they need to say it. And then just have them take a deep breath and relax. And that's it.
Mhm.
They don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to be fixed. They don't,
Yeah.
because they're not feeling broken. They're just feeling they need to express because they don't know what it is. And not everyone feels comfortable talking out loud to themselves. Me, I never had a problem with that. So,
There
but
you go.
when you can take your thinking thoughts out and express them verbally, just it's amazing because that thinking thought, when you hear it, is so far removed from what the thought was. You want a good laugh? Start talking out loud to yourself. You're going to really, really get a good laugh because you're sitting here thinking at the same time you're talking to yourself that this is crazy. I was actually thinking that, So when you bring all your senses into it, it changes everything. It changes everything, right? But you made a good point, being that best you that you can be for yourself, but also, like you said, being that best you that you can do to help others, just to be there for that support, just that space, hold that space. I just need to be quiet and I just need to have somebody there to touch, to hold, or whatever that case may be. And even if it's just your pillow,
Mm.
right? And I know a lot of people have their animals, that do that. And I wanted to bring this up while I'm thinking about it. PTSD. My gosh, it's like almost an epidemic. Now, in your perspective, would you say that PTSD is part of that confinement thing that we talked about earlier, being told what to do, when to do, how to do it, where to do it, and not being able to fit into that world once they've come out of that, whatever they saw, the wars and things like that. I mean, I can go back, and my dad would never talk about the war. I've had boyfriends and stuff, and male friends, and that were in a war zone would never talk about it. I did have a really close friend of mine that we spent 18 years together, and he would only talk about being in Vietnam when there was a movie on, and he always wanted to watch those war movies. And I never understood, okay, you were in that and you were despised it and everything, and you don't talk about it, yet you're drawn to watch this. So I guess that's a piece of him going back maybe into something that became so familiar and working, and bonded with those people that were in the service with him during that wartime. Because I noticed when he was there in that movie, when I would just silently, ask questions in a very soft voice, all of a sudden he was talking about his experience over there. And I think that helped to ease things. And I don't know as if he even realized what he was saying or doing at the time, because he was so in that movie, being back there in Vietnam himself. Right?
I think there's so much to what you just said, and by no means am I any kind of educated mental health professional whatsoever. But coming from my experience, I think there's a whole bunch of points. The first point I think is sometimes I think that those that were in Eloy, was the detention facility, those that were in Eloy with us, we tend to share the more lighthearted, easier moments. And I don't know if that's because it could be a variety of reasons. So I'm just going to spew them off. It could be lack of articulation skills to really, truly give what we saw and experienced and heard true voice. Or if it's where there's a shameful moment of, I was there and I did see, hear, and experience this, and it's not a positive thing. Why would I want to impart that on you?
Sure.
And so it could be that as well. And I also think when it comes to the sharing thing, there's a whole, when it comes to PTSD, Sonia and I had a conversation about this briefly the other day too. The trauma was definitely, did we see traumatic things in there? Beyond a doubt. Did we hear things that no human should have ever had to hear and live through? Beyond a doubt. I'll be the first to say that, and any detainee probably would agree. But that being said, the trauma wasn't just in the experience. The trauma was in the fear of what we could experience next. Right. And so therefore it became staged. So it's not just what I went through on day 201 and what I was hearing that day, but dang it, what am I going to wake up to on day 202? And so therefore I've already set myself up to be fearful and worried about what the next day may bring in that facility.
Sure.
And so I think it's the same thing when it comes to war. And I mean, obviously, Robert, you've served too. It's like, today I'm good, and I heard this gun shell go off way in the distance. Tomorrow, I'm already worried about the trauma. I'm going to experience trauma because I don't know what's coming tomorrow. And it's the same principle in that, in the immigration facility, they can up and move you and pick you and shift you from state to state at their leisure and at their will. That's what they claim to be their right. And so it becomes, you don't know if you're going to wake up and, you get close to someone there. You don't know if you're going to wake up in the morning and they're gone. You don't know whether something's happened to them overnight and no one's voiced it, that you can't, there's no way you can just like totally pick up your cell phone and find out where your buddy is. There's no way of, God love them. There's even times when, some of the detainees were shifted to another facility while I was in there. And it was like, hey, call my family and let them know, because even the system, it could be 48 to 72 hours before they even reported to a family member or a close friend where that detainee had been taken. And I was there when the Guatemalans' children were ripped from their arms, and the mothers were in our facility. The children were sent to a Texas facility. And it took us almost 3 to 4 days for us to be able to pair the children with the mother and at least tell those mothers where their child was. And so I can't imagine some of the stuff and the mother's cries are something that you'll never forget once you've heard them, but it's slow system that way. But talk about the trauma on both of those people. And a brief story on that, I was part of a reunification process between a child and a mother. And the mother was standing on the side with me as an adult detainee, and the guard was with us. There's always a guard. And the child was coming across the courtyard with another guard. The child saw the mother and grabbed the guard's leg. Didn't want to go to the mother.
Oh my goodness.
After 90 days separated. And why is that? Because in that child's mind, my mother left me with these strange people. My mother must be mad at me, or my mother must hate me, or I've done something to make my mother want to do that to me, to leave me with these people. And now these people have taken care of me for 90 days, so I'm going to cling to them. And so talk about the whole trauma experience in that aspect. There's some things that, so when it goes to that, when you were alluding to the war and stuff, I think there's just some things that we won't forget, but there's also some things that we're not, I think the mind has a beautiful way of also shutting them out. Like if
Right.
you say to me, hey, what'd you experience in Eloy? Yeah, I can pull up those, but thankfully they're not the first things that come up. The first things that come up are some of the laughs that we were able to share and some of the things that we were able to enjoy. And some of the positives that are, some of the friends I have as a result of being detained. There's some of the experiences that I had as a result, some of the cultural things that I learned as a result of being there. Come up first. But the PTSD thing, I think in a lot of cases, our brain either won't let us go back there, or it was not necessarily, some people I think have a hard time differentiating between what they experienced and what they thought they may experience. And then I also think the shame and the fear of, I'm going to tell you this, and you may look at me differently because of what I've now experienced, and you're not going to get it. And so it becomes a huge ball of wax when it comes to opening up all of those doors.
You made a good point. You experience one thing in the day, and then your mind takes you off into other avenues as to what could happen, right? Because we begin exaggeration in the brain. Everything runs wild. And then after a while, you begin to wonder, did it really happen, or am I exaggerating because my fear was so inundated that it could happen, that it actually became a part of that memory, of that cell memory, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's huge.
So, it is huge. It is huge. And, we talk a little bit about virtual reality worlds, right? That's Robert's expertise on the virtual reality worlds. And, and again, we can take ourselves into what is real in the moment, how we perceive what's taking place in our life right now at this moment. But we also, as you mentioned, is to what it is that we believe or think could possibly happen. We live in a world filled with negative, which is really sad, and it's having this voice and, being that expression to, let's start living in a world where it's always positive and bring it out. Not to deny that we don't have two charges, a positive and a negative charge. It's what do we fuel those emotions with? What do we fuel our events with? And to be able to start recognize if we're fueling them with an emotion that takes us south, maybe we need to start shifting and recognize that that's what we're doing and start fueling that event with a positive charge, because what the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And we see that in virtual reality, and that's one thing that Robert has really shown me in this virtual reality world, how they've built things in there. If the mind can think it, we can build it in that world, and you can do that here in this reality. So your reality is nothing more than what you create here and manifest here in this physical form. And virtual reality has made that even more clear to me, being able to see those virtual reality worlds and what people have created in them. I mean, some of the beauty that's in some of these worlds are like, oh my gosh, So again, where your reality is your is. So there's no right, there's no wrong, there's no good, there's no bad. All there is your is. And a lot of people don't understand that statement. But your is your reality in whatever little comfort zone box you're in. Do you broaden it, or do you just stay right here? Right? Right?
Well, it's like Stephen R. Covey is famous for saying everything's created twice. Once in the mind and then once outside the mind, right? And so it's the same thing when it comes to, everything's created in here first before I actually lay pen to paper or fingers to a keypad,
Right.
or, whatever it happens to be. Everything's created twice. And so we have to create everything here first anyway, before we can even push it out there and make the blueprint for it and make the plan to make it happen. And the same as that, and God love you for going down that path. My mind is probably most locked on the whole aspect of what emotion we tie to anything that goes on in our worlds right now. And I in our newsletter, in one of our blogs, I literally shared a flower dying, a plant dying in your home. Some people would be like, dang it, that plant died.
Right.
And if it had emotional attachment, as in my grandmother gave it to me, she's no longer with us. Now the plant's dead too. It could really, have that impact of
Right.
sadness across that person.
Right.
Where other people may see that plant die and go, dang it, I was just planting new seeds. This dead plant will now become amazing fertilizer for the new seeds, and see it as a positive. Same experience, same absolute thing. The plant died.
That's right.
Some people will see it as a positive, and other people will have a sadness around it.
Right.
And yet we attach that emotion. It's not given to us. It's not preset.
No, it's not.
And it's like, and I think that that's probably one of the largest lessons for me. And that's why I still struggle when people say, what's your biggest struggle in business? Or what's your biggest challenge? We tend to put negative behind those when, boy, oh boy, they can be positives.
Right.
And so it's crazy. And not that I want to be a Pollyanna, and not that I want to pretend that I don't struggle with negativity. I did a Friday Flash too. Self-abuse is very real for me. And my mind goes crazy more often than not. And especially when it comes to being back out and having absolutely next to nothing, apart from what you see and what you know. But yet, the other people at my stage in life have a home, getting ready for retirement, car in the driveway, have vacation in exotic places, et cetera, et cetera. But then I'm holding myself to their standards and hearing them rather than staying true to myself. And I think that that's oftentimes, even business-wise, going to an entrepreneurship stuff, we hold ourselves to someone else's light rather than holding ourselves to our own light and our own journey. And it just became a huge lesson. And it still is a huge lesson for me. I am not above the fray when it comes to negative mindset. I'm not above the fray when it comes to limiting self-beliefs. I'm not above the fray when it comes to, God love, my partner and stuff, and having to listen to me and see the tears flow. But the difference is I'm able to grab it and pull it back. And all of us have that power at some point, as long as we're willing to use it.
That's it. It's putting it into action, and nothing ever happens without an action. And again, I want to go back and reiterate on this being aware, the awareness of what is going on in your surroundings, and most importantly, what's going on up here in your perception of that awareness. Make it what you want it to make it. The only person that can change it is you, and the only way you're going to make change is by doing it. You can talk all you want. Talk is cheap, right? Talk is cheap. Right? And lie to the world. Go and lie to the world. Tell them whatever story you want, but don't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
Don't lie to yourself. Be you. Be you in the face of whatever that you is, whatever your experiences are. Make that best you, because it's going to make you stronger and it's going to drive you forward. And so what? If somebody doesn't like you, who cares? There's multi-billions of people in the world. You don't need them in your life. You don't know what's you don't know what's going on with them. You're not walking in their shoes.
Well, and we don't have to also go down to where they are. And I don't want to use the word down, I just did, but if you're angry at me, that's your emotion.
That's right.
I don't have to be apologetic if I don't feel, and oftentimes, and as wrong as, God love us, we're live, but as wrong as this may sound, it's not that I don't believe in apologizing, but I also don't believe necessarily apologies are fixing anything.
No, they're not.
In you being upset with me and me going into your emotion to say, hey, I get that you're upset. It's more advantageous for me to see you upset and move forward and correct that, to pull you out of it rather than joining you where you are.
Right.
And so, and I totally firmly believe that. It's like, we anger somebody. I don't need to go step into your anger to recognize that you're there and be all apologetic and, belittled and berated because of your anger. I don't have to join you there. I can go and recognize that you're angry, recognize what may have made you angry that I've done, and I can correct my stance and pull you to where I am instead of me joining you where you are. And it just becomes a huge opportunity for all of us, because I think that sometimes when people get upset with us, when you were sharing that part, it's that we we join them there, and then we're upset with us. And it's like, why are you joining
Exactly.
them right there? Don't
Right.
join them. Like, you can I can validate you without joining you.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
You
it's
know, it's
huge.
like being empathetic or sympathetic, right? Don't
Yeah,
take on everybody else's problem because you got enough of your own. You know, when
yeah,
we talk about emotions, and when I work with emotions with people, it's like 95% of all that emotion that you have stored in your cell memory is somebody else's.
yeah. Isn't that crazy?
5% is yours. You think you're going to find what that 5% is? Well, think again. Not in this lifetime, you're not. So
Yeah,
it's not serving you a purpose. Let go of it. And you made a really good point. You don't need to go down where someone is. You know, and it might have been one word that triggered. They're not angry at you. They're
yeah,
angry at an action you took or a word that you spoke that triggered a past event that they were never able to express. And all of a sudden, it's a safety zone because the person that they're really angry at is themselves, but being triggered by an event. Now they can just blame it on you and just dump it all out, right? And
yeah,
if you let them implode and then say, okay, so now what's the real problem? Right? Let's clean this mess up because, it's not serving you a purpose, it's not serving me a purpose. And I think we use that word, sorry too often, right? Something happens and it's all about sorry, 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 and it's like, oh my gosh. It's kind of like that word love, love, love. I mean, how many times have you heard people say, to someone that they love them and they want to go and slit their jugular? And it's like, seriously? Right? Again, that lack of communication. The lack of communication. So when you want to be an expression of whatever it is, then be it in the moment as you see it, as you feel it, as you perceive it, but also recognize where it's coming from, what the trigger was, and be accountable to yourself and responsible for the action that you're going to take to their action. So it's all action, reaction, action, reaction. And when you understand that before you out there and implode, take a deep breath and say, whoa, how can I change this? This is my normal reaction. I'm going to change it. And people who push your buttons. Oh, kids are great for this, right? So this button pushing thing, when you can recognize someone's pushing your button, if you want to really throw them for a loop, and they've just pushed your button, throw out a question or something so far removed that it puts them in this position of deer in the headlight look, like, what?
yeah.
What's that got to do with anything? Make it a game. And that is going to help you go beyond some of these automatic pilot reactions to where everything begins to go south because you go, now they got their little shot of energy or whatever. It's their control, manipulation, whatever is putting them in the feeling of power. Don't give them your power. And you can change that just by throwing something out there so far removed, and it can be pretty funny because now they forget exactly where they left off. They have really no clue where they left off.
And the favorite line is, I know I'm mad at you, but I don't remember why.
Exactly. It's like, wait a minute, you were supposed to do this and you did that. What's going on here? Are you okay? Are you
Yeah.
sick? What's going on, right? Right. Robert, something's building up inside of you. You got something to say about some of the things we were just talking about?
I'm trying to hang on for the ride right now
Okay.
because there's a lot of information here.
So,
Um, yeah, I mean, it's I always say um, mind over matter.
mind
And if
over
you don't
matter.
mind, it doesn't matter. So,
Right.
I don't really get caught up with what people think about me. I think about me, and not to be, sexist or anything like that. I can't even talk right because I got these earphones on. But it's like through my life, I've you go up in life and you always have all these, great things that happen to you, and then all of a sudden when you fall, and if you make a great big fall and you get hurt, I feel like I'm listening a lot of about business and personal here, and what I can say is, if you are going to fail, the thing is failing is part of success.
Yes.
And some people do it more than other people. Some people just do it a couple times in their life. You know what I'm saying? And the mentors that I've had in my life, they just say, hey, surround yourself with successful people. Don't be scared to ask. You know, and me being on this call right here, I feel like I'm around a lot of successful people right now, and I'm listening to a lot of these events that have happened in everybody's life, and it's like I'm not the only one. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't
Yeah.
matter that I'm a male or you folks are females. Everybody is in the same boat,
Right.
so you did chime in a little bit on some things that resonated in my life, and that's why I like being on the show, because it's like, wow, the light has been shining a little brighter now, and so I'm getting a lot of takeaways here that I'm taking notes in my mind, but I'll just go back to the replay on this to write them down. But yeah, but happy to be here.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And it's good confirmation too that the things that we share here that can impact and affect our audience. And please comment below. What's going on in your life. Did we touch on something? If it's something that you want more private, private message any of us, and we'll see what we can do to start working around eliminating that stuff. And it's that ask word, and we talked a little bit about that earlier, Cheryl, is to not knowing how to voice, not knowing how to ask. And that was probably one of my biggest struggles, because I can remember as a child asking for something, and always being turned down, right? And so as an adult, when I would ask someone for assistance, right, I expected it to happen right now, not 3 days from now, not an hour from now. People will say, "Hey, anything I can do for you? What can I help you with? What can I help you with?" And it's like, okay, okay. So it's like, all right, I know it's getting close to the time. I'm going to ask, right? And but it's like I want it done now. So when I ask and say, okay, you can help me with this, if you can do it right now, I'd like to have this done, right? And then they continue to finish doing whatever they're doing, or they're talking on their phone, or and they're not doing it. And then I just, because it's something that had to get done right now, I'll just go and do it, and I won't ask them again, right? And then they come back and say, well, I was going to do that. And I say, isn't going to cut it. If I ask you to do something, I need it done in the moment I ask, not a minute later, anything, in the moment. And so I'm pretty, I really pride myself in this, that when someone asks me to do something in the moment, I'll immediately do it. Or, they say, okay, can you do this? And I'll start doing it, right? And they say, well, you don't have to do it right this second. I say, yes, I do. Because if I don't do it now, I may not get to it, right? So, and again, it's that communication. And so I start asking, it's like, okay, so what on my end can I do to get what I'm, looking for? So I'll ask someone and say, you got some time? Yes. Could you stop what you're doing right now and help me over here to finish up this? And they'll either say yes or no. Then there's no, am I going to do it now, or am I going to do it later?
Yeah.
So, but
It's
it's
setting the expectations of
exactly,
the results
exactly.
that you hope to attain, which become, and
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like, and boy, we lose sight of that. You ask a teenager, I need you to make your bed. Well, we didn't say we need it made before an 11 o'clock real estate agent comes into the home. And so if he
Right.
doesn't get it done till 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're sitting here at 10:59, disappointed by the lack of action. And yet we didn't articulate why we needed the action to happen on a certain
Right.
time. But then we also lose sight of, when it comes to that grace thing, we may lose sight of, well, that same teenager emptied the dishwasher this morning, totally vacuumed the floors, swept down the stairs. But boy, we're going to nitpick on the fact that he didn't make his bed, because that's the one thing we asked.
Right.
And we don't see what has been done. We only see what hasn't been done in
What
others
hasn't?
oftentimes. And I think that, boy, oh boy, that has been huge too. We don't recognize, we don't give grace. We don't show grace. And so we don't, where I may be looking, some people may be saying, well, you're not answering my email. I'm not answering your email, but I just shared your Facebook posting, upped your game exposure wise. So do
Right.
you want that email shared, or do you want that email responded to with a yes or no, or would you rather have this? don't recognize exactly what's going on. We only recognize what we're looking for.
Right.
And so the limited perception that we all carry and we all have becomes, to look beyond that becomes, it opens up a whole new world often.
It does, and when you open up that perspective too, that's also moving yourself out of that comfort zone, right? And a lot of people don't like to move out of that comfort zone. It's kind of like what you had mentioned, being in that detention. That becomes your comfort zone because it's all you know. And so you're going to make the best of it, and in your mind, whatever's going on up here, right? This is your exterior comfort zone. And so when you're thrown out of it, it's like, oh, what do I do? There's nobody telling me it's time to eat. There's nobody telling me it's time to take your shower. There's no time, somebody telling me it's time to go to bed, all these things, and it's like, what do I do? Because this has been so comfortable for this extended period of time. What do they say? It takes 45 days to create a habit and 90 days to break it,
Yeah.
right? Right? So when you look at that, I mean, okay, so here you were in 295 days of creating this. And then all of a sudden, in a split second, the outside world was in front of you. And it's like, whoa, what do I do?
Well, and then oftentimes more people spend more time trying to break the old habit rather than investing time in creating the new.
The new. Exactly.
And
exactly.
So we're backwards, and I say we very encompassing because I'm part of the backwards movement.
Yeah.
But
we're all guilty of that. That's for sure.
Beyond
Right.
adult.
Right.
But seeing it and why am I spending time trying to stop going to the local variety store and buying chocolate bars? Here I am trying to stop my feet from going down that path when I should be worried about how I'm going to program my feet to go to the fruit and vegetable aisle. And so it's like that whole shift needs to happen.
It is that whole thought processing needs to take place, and that can only happen when you become aware what your automatic responses are, right? And so as soon as you can recognize an automatic response, then you can take the actions to change it. And it all starts up here. All starts up here in that creation of where your thoughts are going and what it is that you want. And I think a lot of people, are so programmed into that comfort zone, even if it's miserable, it's predictable, right? It's predictable. And that's what holds them in that comfort zone, right? Is that predictability. But I don't know what's over there. And that kind of goes back to when you said, the fear is like, what is going to happen tomorrow? So I don't know what's out there, but I know what's here. So if I stay here, it's predictable and I'm safe. Even if it's miserable, at least I know it's safe to a certain degree, right? So how do you transform that into, how do I go beyond that fear? And it's like, so you're thinking it could be this, but what if it was this? Right? And so we go back into that goal setting type of things. Where are your dreams? What is it that you want? And I think a lot of people lose track of that dream, that it becomes such an unreality anymore. A total like, oh, that was just a fluke, a pretend world that I had. But your pretend world is really your reality if you make it that. We talk about vision boards. There's more and more stuff coming out about a vision board, right? And basically all it is taking what you perceive up here, those pictures that you create up here, find them in a magazine, print them off of Google, whatever. I mean, you can find any picture out there, or sketch it, even if it's just a stick person or a stick house, right? In your mind, you're going to see the reality of it. But when you put that up in front of you, it helps you move beyond that little comfort zone, and all of a sudden you begin dreaming again. You begin thinking further out of the box. So what if I do step out of this? I can step into that. If you have nothing to create out there but fear, you're only going to step into fear, because what you think is what you get, right? What you perceive is what you have. So it's changing that, but you got to recognize where all that is first, and then Go the opposite. We're in this duality world, right? It's either this or it's this. So go to
Yeah.
the extreme opposite. So if you recognize a thought that just is an automatic reaction, to someone's action, take that, put that over here in this duality. What would be the complete opposite of that over here? And then what can you do to go reach this in your belief system? And trust that you can, and let that fear drive that instead of push you down and pull you back over on the other side. So you have negative and positive charges. So fear can be turned into caution, and it can be turned into a very strong energy force that pushes you into a positive outcome. So we talk positive, negatives being good or bad. It's a false truth, right? So positive, negative are only charges that fuel whatever it is, whether it's a fear that gets fueled to something that's going to spiral you going south, or is it going to spiral you to go north? Because you can take that fear and just drive with it.
True. And those that are listening that are saying, I can't do that, I want to advocate that John C. Maxwell was, I will quote him all day long, but I can't do that. Can't is a inability.
Right.
And so we all are able to do what you're suggesting, as in pivot our mindset and work towards the positive and see the positives. And so when people say, I can't do that, it's not that you can't, it's you won't.
You won't.
And then you need to determine why you won't. Because we all have the same capabilities to totally shift our mindset, to totally, build a business to success, to totally make the best of what may not be a best situation. And so it's not, I can't do that. And so I want to advocate that people need to really see that for what it is. Because when you say can't, it's a matter of ability. You have the ability, you're choosing not to. It's
Right.
literally a choice at this moment. And so it's like you won't do it, and you better figure out why you won't.
Right. And
Because
again,
then
it
that-
usually goes into that little fear thing, right?
Yeah.
The predictability and the unpredictability, right?
It's huge.
It is. It's very huge. Yeah, you use that word can't. Okay, it took me back to fifth grade. In fifth and sixth grade, we had the same teachers. We were in the same classroom, and she was the only lay teacher in a parochial school, so it was always nuns, but she was a lay teacher in my fifth and sixth grade. And one thing that I took out of that I have never ever forgotten was she said, can't never did anything. Right? And you just reiterated that, right? And again, it's a choice. You either can or you won't.
Yeah.
It's not that you cannot do it, it's you're choosing not versus can.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that old word try. What is actually try? That word shouldn't even be in the vocabulary. You'll either do it or you won't do it.
Yeah.
Right? So
true.
try is a license to fail. Why? Because we live in a negatively charged world. So we choose to go this way because it's familiar instead of this way because it's unfamiliar. But you can make that reality out there whatever you want. Whatever you want out there. And if you want to have it fear out there, well, guess what? That's what's going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. So it's like the Cherokee mission, where the chief was talking to the young man, right? And he says there's two wolves that live inside of you, right? Remember that story? I think most of us remember that story, right? So one is evil and one is good, right? And so he talked about what the evil wolf does and what the good wolf does. And so the little boy says, so which one wins? and the chief says, the one you feed. The one you feed, right? So what are you feeding your thoughts? What are you feeding your wolf, right? Are you feeding it fear? Or are you feeding it love? Right? Because that's what it boils down to. Again, we have that duality world, right? So, yeah, it's gosh, what a day. We could take this conversation and go for hours and hours and hours, right?
Absolutely.
Cheryl, I am so honored that you joined us today, and thank you so much for sharing your story, and because there's so many people out there that really needed to hear where you've been in your struggles and in your challenges and the experiences that you had, and how you moved out of that little space and turned it back into this beautiful world, and how you're also helping others to know that whatever that prison is that you've created, because we make our own prisons regardless of where our surroundings are, our own prison begins right here, right here. And the only person that has the key to that prison door is you. And this show is all about helping you find that key and opening that prison door to becoming that better you in every action and activity that you take throughout the day. Right? So, do you have any final words before we end the show?
I don't. I don't. I don't have any big conclusive thought process whatsoever. The hour went fast with you, and I'm humbled and honored to be part of your world. And so, thank you for including me in it and keeping me in it, because that is a choice, and I recognize.
Always, always. And you know what? I know you can't get back into the States, but I can get to Canada. I got this little blue thing that says, yes, you can cross the border.
Well, thankfully, I can get back into the States. It's just a matter of time. And so we will make that happen, and we will embrace it.
Right. And, we will. But you know what? I haven't been in that part of Canada, so you know what? I can head up that direction. You know, on my journey up that way, I guess I could stop by, see Robert out in his little desolated. But it won't be now in the wintertime, I'll guarantee you that one.
I don't advocate the winter visits. There's no lie.
No. It's nice down here.
Thank you for having me. I am honored to be part of it and part of the movement that really understands that we are all humans. I don't care where
we are, and it always begins with you.
Yeah, ourselves.
Right. And tell the audience out here how they can reach you. I'm going to put your little stats up here too, and let them know where they can reach you on the social medias and stuff. And
I am Embrace and Become is across every social media platform as Embrace and Become. So Facebook.com/Embrace and Become. I'm happy to have people reach out to me as an individual. More than open to that as well. Cheryl@embraceandbecome.com is the email address. The website's there. Embraceandbecome.com. And so embrace it, everything. Instagram, Embrace and Become. Twitter, Embrace and Become. We are totally branded that way and have it out. We are all about just helping people recognize where they are, embracing that, and meeting them where they are. We don't try and take them where we are. We meet them where they're at, see where they want to go, and hopefully advocate to how they can get there. And so that's exactly our business model and our business mission and our vision to better ourselves, but also better those around us and take them up.
That's awesome. So embrace yourself and who you are in the presence of where you are in the moment, and then go out there and do what? Find a way, one little thing in that day to become the best you that you can be. So for now, we're all going to say goodbye. Go out there and be that best you that you can be, because we're all going to go out there and be the best we that we can be. And thank you again, Cheryl, for being here. Thank you, Robert. And see you guys on the next show.